Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alrighty. So, Assalamu alaikum, everyone. So, this is a new series that I have called Chatting. I forget what the title is, like Chatting with AI. So, basically, the idea I have is to go back and forth with an AI, trying to fine tune their observations and kind of push them to their limit. In my experience, they aren't. If you're a specialist, AI isn't going to be able to tell you much. You're going to end up helping them way more than they're helping you. At least when you get into the deep nitty gritty and being 100% certain about your answer. Because imagine being a patient of a doctor and a lawyer, and you're like, I don't need to go to a doctor, I don't need to go to a lawyer, or someone needing a doctor or a lawyer. And you try to use AI, like, okay, these are my symptoms. The AI says do this, even though most of them are going to say, hey, and they're probably trained not even to give answers. But the moral of the story is, will you trust an answer from AI with your life, or would you trust a person? It's a person without a doubt. So the first topic up today is going to be animal testing. I don't have the upgraded Claude, so I'm gonna have to try to make this work. Animal testing causes, let's see if I can.
Animal testing causes immense suffering to sentient beings who cannot consent to these experiments. These animals experience fear, pain, and distress while being confined in unnatural conditions and subjected to harmful procedures. Many animal experiments have poor predictive value for human outcomes. Despite similarities in biology, animals often react differently to drugs and treatments than humans do. For example, many drugs that appear safe in animal trials later prove harmful to humans, while potentially beneficial treatments may be abandoned due to adverse reactions in animals. Alternative testing methods exist and continue to advance, including computer modeling, human cell cultures, human tissue studies, and sophisticated organ-on-a-chip technology. These methods can often provide more reliable, human-relevant data without causing animal suffering. The resources devoted to animal testing could be better spent developing and validating these alternative methods, which would ultimately lead to safer and more effective human medicines. Would you like me to elaborate on any of these points or discuss specific alternatives to animal testing?
That was kind of fire. That killed it. This point right here killed it. If this is actually true, then that kind of killed it. But this might not be economically effective. Which, okay. So this position is anti-animal testing. And I'm going to try to give the AI in all of these series, I'm going to try to give them the least favorable point, or the point that I think would be harder to argue against. Animal testing, I feel like, let me see. So animal testing causes immense suffering to sentient beings who cannot consent to these experiments. These animals experience fear, pain, distress while being confined in unnatural conditions and subjected to human procedures. When it comes to issues like this, I like to try to think big picture. When you try to think big picture, you ask yourself what's right and what's wrong. But then many people don't do that, so they have never really thought deeply about how they decide what's right and what's wrong. Me and my friend Greg always have this debate, and we're gonna hopefully I'll have him on the channel and so we can discuss it here. But how do you decide what's right and wrong? For many people, it's religion in the discussion. But if you don't believe in religion, and if you live in more of a secular world, uh, many I know many atheists accept the position that they don't believe in moral right and bad. They have a different kind of calculation, and it's not as simple as, hey, that's bad for bad sake, because they don't believe in a bad sake, because that will require order and structure and truth. Atheists don't necessarily believe in truth. They, elegant dance to nowhere, a bunch of atoms smashing around, and now we're here type of thing. I think that's kind of their perspective. So that's why, or I could be wrong, let me know. So coming from the other perspective of, okay, I decide right and wrong based on a religious text. Me as a Muslim, I would look at the religious text and look what it says about animal testing. Now, I would be curious to see if there had been any animal testing during the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. We know there was sacrifice, so, and from that we can kind of tell. We know that used to eat meat, but there's also a lot of tradition that he did not eat a lot of meat at all. But meat is permissible in Islam. When you slaughter an animal, there's in certain times there's blessing for that if you give it to the poor. So I say all of that to say that in Islam, animals are subject to human will and benefit in certain circumstances. So like you're not supposed to kill an animal in an aggressively painful or torturous manner. Of course not. You're not supposed to eat an animal that died of unnatural or of natural causes. Like if you don't kill it, why you shouldn't, in Islamic law, you shouldn't eat it if it died of natural causes or got hit by something and died, or but bigger picture, I believe as Muslims we are here as vicegerents on God's earth, meaning there's no necessary authority above human beings in the day-to-day, in like this worldly life, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala of course oversees and has control of everything and constantly sustains everything. But human beings are his vicegerents. What is a vicegerent? A person exercising delegated power on behalf of a sovereign or ruler. We're exercising, I need to get my definitions in line, but I know what words I choose, and that's how it's translated in from Arabic to English most of the time. I forget what's the Arabic word for vicegerent. But yeah, so someone exercising delegated power on behalf of sovereign ruler authority. That's what human beings, I believe, are doing on this earth. So animals aren't exercising God's will, so they're at our mercy, just like humans are at God's mercy. Meaning we should also be merciful to them as we would like God to be merciful to us. So when it comes to animal testing, I would say that you definitely can't unnecessarily cause pain to the animal while it's living. But what's interesting about these kind of questions? There are people who are actual professionals that ask these questions. And one of his name is Sohaib Malik, because he also deals with a much tougher question of organ donation. Many human beings or many Muslims sometimes want to, or we struggle with this ideological position of, hey, I would probably accept an organ to save my life or some of my family's lives, but when I die, if I die early, I don't necessarily want to be autopsied. I want to go right into the ground. So you have that kind of conflict there where you will benefit from organ donation, but you don't want to contribute to organ donation. So he actually gets into that and how we should think about those kinds of things. But I think it's in Edinburgh. How do you spell Edinburgh? I'm struggling here. No, Shoaib. I think that's what. This is the brother right here. I put Edinburgh. So he has a lot of papers, Islamic in evolution. He also has some other, but he has a good book. I'm about to download all of his papers. And he's been writing a lot. Wow, these papers are probably hella deep. This one is interesting. I'll do that a little bit later. What does that word even mean? Neo, yeah. So that's the guy. Like I want to save this page. Okay. All right. So let me see. Maybe I'll ask Claude. I'll ask Claude. What does the I'll ask. So before Claude gives its answer, I will. mm, Before Claude gives this answer, I'll give my answer. I would say that limited animal testing is probably definitely allowed, being that even though a sentient being can't give you consent, we don't need consent from something that is not of the same sentient level as us, because it's our job to take care of them anyway. God created, we are the vicegerents. We are a person that's been delegated power on behalf of a sovereign or ruler. So a person regarded as an earthly representative of God, and for Catholics, that's the Pope. But in Islamic thought, everyone is a vicegerent of God. So that's why you're going to be judged as one. What did you do while you were a guest in God's house? How did you treat the place? How did you treat the guests? So we don't need. So that's like saying, did we get a chair's consent when we sat on it? How do you know it's not sentient on some level that just can't express, whatever? I see why you wouldn't say that, but consciousness is a very ephemeral thing. And what does ephemeral mean? I need to get down on it. Lasting for no, it's not ephemeral. That's not what I mean. Consciousness is very. What do I mean? It's not very well understood. It's very mysterious. Consciousness is is fundamental, as Donald Hoffman would say. We don't understand how consciousness really works, and I may agree that when something has been molded by humans, but definitely maybe when you, I was gonna say, take something from its natural resting place, like a tree. We know if we take the life of an animal that you've engaged with a consciousness, and we even know that to a tree to a pretty certain distinct level. I would tend to say, so the next level of thought is rocks. If you smash a rock, is it feeling some kind of way? And what other things could be like that? The air around you. If you want to get really, really weird, like, I guess waves and other kind of forces, are they conscious? The causal line is complete, but consciousness and us, we don't know, like, cosmology and epistemology is very complicated. So I would say that the human consciousness, how would I describe the human consciousness? It sounds like it's fundamental, yet at the same time very mysterious, unknowable. It just occurs to me that that's the only thing I would think of to call that would be God, would be Allah, something that's absolutely necessary but beyond understanding. So, and that kind of goes to the point of, like, there's nothing real besides God. We are all we only exist because God is paying attention to us. If God wasn't conscious of us, we would not exist. So, yeah. So I would say that, that to try to really hone in on consciousness essence very acutely, you'll end up coming to the area of accepting you're part of a larger one. But beyond that, how else could we describe consciousness on a human level? Just is free will, I guess, is what people say. I forget where I went off with that. Okay, these animals experience fear, pain, yeah, but like some of these things can be mitigated during tests. Is if depending on, I think, whether Islam will allow animal testing, I think is where we can mitigate the fear, the pain, and the distress that the animal is confined in. So if we can mitigate those to a great level, I think the good answer, the allowable answer, which according to me, I establish good and right based on Islamic tradition. So I would say that if you mitigate the fear, pain, and stress of an animal, you can test on them for human benefit, possibly, depending on what the need is. So I would say yes, if you can mitigate those things. Now let's ask Claude, is animal testing allowed in Islam? Okay. God's creatures deserve respect and compassion. That's true, but we are still above them when it comes to we can. God allows us to kill them for food. God didn't allow that reality for them to us. So we can respect and have compassion while still using them for as a food source. Unnecessary harm to animals is forbidden. That's outright. It outright says that. So that's true. I would agree. Unnecessary harm, but animal testing isn't unnecessary, one would argue. So maybe they're making an excuse, but that's still good though. But that's not necessarily answers to the question. But according to this, there may be alternatives, so it may be unnecessary. But if it's necessary, then harm may be allowed. Muslims are permitted to use animals for legitimate human needs. That's what I was saying, but must minimize suffering. That's what I was saying. The general Islamic position depends on necessity, darura, if there is no alternative. So I agree if the testing leads to significant human benefit, if the suffering is minimized as much as possible. Most contemporary scholars permit animal testing when it's conducted with genuine medical research that could save human lives. No viable alternatives exist. Steps, strict scrutiny. Steps are taken to minimize animal stuffing. But like, is there a level where if you can't minimize it anymore, are you still allowed to do it? I would say no. If there's a threshold where, like, but then let's really ask ourselves, if you could kill cancer, but you had to do like some you know what kind of experiments with dogs, that the F man looks like a Sesame Street character, but if you had to do some of those kind of experiments in order to kill cancer, it's not a matter. Should you morally do it? If you had to let an animal suffer in such horrendous ways, but you could cure cancer? Anything other than do it is human grandstanding, one could argue. If you're going to try to make it seem like, no, we shouldn't do that. But then again, maybe we shouldn't. This life is short. Why everyone can't live forever anyway? It'd be civil war if everyone lived forever and no one wanted to die and we couldn't go to space. So trying to end sickness or trying to elongate life, I think, is the issue, because no one likes to be in suffering or see their family suffering. But is it worth elongating all these human lives if it means just doing fundamentally evil things, such as like making animals just exist in a horrible existence and then die? The answer is no. Like, what makes your life? I can see if you just needed to, like, I think the most you maybe could do is but like, can you even break? I was gonna say like break a bone, but no, that's probably too much. Let alone like just constant torture or like, I can't imagine. So I would say the answer is no. Like, even if you could, like, if you have to really, really induce pain and stress on an animal, I would say it's not Islamically legal. Most contemporary scholars permit animal testing when it's conducted for genuine medical research that could save human lives. However, they generally oppose cosmetic testing. That makes a lot of sense. Don't just get over here to do something that's not allowed anyway. Unnecessary duplication, testing that causes excessive suffering, testing when okay, that makes sense. So ultimately, that's where I think we come down on ethical concerns on animal testing. We'll ask one. I want to ask one more question. Like, is there an acceptable, like, pain tolerance meter in the field? So I'm supposed to be taking on the opinion that we should, but, like, I guess I got to consider what Islam says. So, because I'm not really going to argue against what Islam says. All right, on to the next topic. What else did I say I was gonna talk about? I think I said abortion. All right, so I'm asking I'm asking Claude AI to now make an argument in favor of allowing abortion according to the standards set in just go to case Casey. So let's see what it can do. Okay. According to according to Casey, abortion should be legal because the government cannot place an undue burden on a woman's right to obtain abortion before fetal viability. Fetal viability. So the fetus has to be viable before um, the, the government can place the burden on the woman to maintain the pregnancy or can make the abortion illegal. So viability is the standard here. The state may regulate abortion but cannot make it impossible to obtain one. This balances both the state interest in potential life and the woman's fundamental liberty interest. So fundamental liberty versus the state interest in protecting the life, the potential life, which states are all about living human beings. They're not about human beings that don't exist. Casey recognized that women's ability to participate equally in economic and social life is inextricably linked to their ability to control their reproductive lives. So their ability to participate equally in economic and social life is inextricably linked. So, but this is my issue. Should we be expecting women to? This is the mark of the devil. This is the mark of the devil, and I'm glad Claude called it. So this is why they allowed abortions, because women have to be able to participate equally. You know what my only issue with that is? Men and women aren't equal. We aren't the same thing. We're physiologically have different brains, have different bodies, have different DNA, have different souls, have different mindsets, have different things that make us happy on average. So we have a law here governing, telling us as human beings, because remember, the states couldn't used to override this. This was law, meaning that if you have a state that values a nuclear family kind of life, and you want to promote that instead of a life that allows for selective abortions outside of outside of the extreme cases that we all know about. So that's I get in a lot of trouble sometimes just for talking about things like in this amount of depth, but or just making these kind of points. But I think the first principle, we can't just assume things that aren't true. Logically, when you have a breakdown in your assumptions, when you're in your presumption, whatever they call them, I forget, it's escaping me now. Then everything else after that, I don't want to listen to it. If you say, since the sky is green, I need you to do. I'm like, wait, what do you mean since the sky is not green? So why would I trust anything you're about to say? Like, because you're basing everything you're saying off of your presupposition, preposition, purpose. I don't know. Presumption. So since the Constitution has a presumption that men and women have to be able to do things equally, it's inextricably linked to their productive lives. So if they need to be able to live an equal life, they need to be able to not have to deal with the burdens of a child, is what they're saying. Because if a man engaged is in a sexual action where a baby is now in conceived, he can go on about his life and still be economic and social. A woman has to sit down. You gotta sit down. If you let Willie Earl pop you off, you gotta sit on down. The ruling held that before viability, a woman has the right to make the ultimate decision about pregnancy and childbirth, while the state can encourage women to know about arguments for care. It cannot. The ruling held that before viability, a woman has the right to make the ultimate decision about pregnancy and childbirth, while the state can encourage women to know about arguments for carrying them. It cannot hinder. Okay. This framework respects both individual liberty and state interests, allowing regulation but preserving the core right It prevents states from effectively banning abortion through. Okay, so is it a false? It's called premise, is what I was trying to think of earlier. Premise. Is it a false premise? This question is going to determine whether I'm going to continue doing this. Because if it can give me a smart answer for this and not some milk toast woke answer, I'm going to be highly impressed. Because this is what I would like to know if I was watching this debate or hearing this debate. Is it a false premise logically, not constitutionally, to think that men and women should given that they are physiologically different in their bodies, in their brain, and in their emotional constitution? Let's see what AI can do. Making it think, that's for sure. Ooh, he still got some logical flaws for me. Let's see what he got. He got a damn 7. So I kind of got treated. He only gave me 5. Oh, several. All right, let's see. So let's see. I'm wrong because it commits the naturalistic fallacy, deriving an ought from an is. The existence of biology doesn't logically determine how society. How doesn't it? How doesn't it? They have different. How doesn't it? Women can't work as long. They can't. They aren't strong enough. They can't dig as fast as the ditches. Like, I can see the point of the ought from an is. I appreciate that, and that's a very intelligent response. But so my response to this one is I'll just write it down here. Please respond to my The existence of biological differences doesn't logically determine how. Shouldn't those biological differences determine how society is structured if the society wants to be efficient and happy? All right, so that's number. Okay, number 2. It assumes that group level statistical differences translate to individual capabilities. Group level, while there may be an average differences between men and women in some traits, the distribution. Wait, so this basically saying men and women aren't different. Many women outperform the more average and traditional men. Bro, see, this is that BS. Number 2 is just wrong. Should I put it assumes that group. I can't just put you are wrong. They do not wear so all right, so I kind of feel like all right, so I'm just batting at each one of these logical. I'm so happy he presented me with these logical flaws that he thinks are there. This is exactly what I wanted ideally. Um, all right, so he basically assuming, but yes, like if you're talking about, like how much time it takes you to go grocery shopping, or how much time it takes you to like walk a average city block. Men and women are going to overlap a lot, but in the areas that I put down, like such as physical strength and desire to work as opposed to raising children, um, which is how the human species continues. Okay. It presupposes number three. It presupposes that current biological differences are wholly natural rather than potentially influenced by environments such as education. Biological difference are technically biological. I hear what they're saying. Basically, so I said like the physiology, like the differences in men and women's brains. It may be that their pathways develop that way because of environmental education and social expectations over generations. So, but it's still like I get you. I get you. I get where you're coming from. But let's say that the patriarchy developed men and women brains to be physiologically different. The men and women are have other like evolutionary or physical, like men and women, we have different physical bodies, so no matter what, wouldn't our brains develop different ways because we are engaging the world in a different way? Like if you brush your hand with one toothbrush every day and you brush it with another, but so imagine going through the world and you're used to doing one set of things as a woman, and or you're used to being able to only lift 20 pounds, but as a man you can lift 40 pounds. Your brain is going to know different things and feel and be different ways. So you can't just say that patriarchy made us different. We are different, and the patriarchy acknowledged that, and our brains developed the way they did because we had to acknowledge reality. Like our brains couldn't have developed like birds because that wasn't our reality. Like, or I mean, like we couldn't have had the experience of what, because this is what it's saying: environmental factor, education, and social expectations, societal expectations over generations. So, yeah. What should I put here? It presupposes that the current biological differences are wholly natural. But well, so, but by our we were so those biological differences are an effect, not a cause. They must happen given the predetermined bio. It implies that economic and social situation requires identical rather than equivalent. No, it doesn't. So they're saying it implies that economic and social participation requires that identical rather than equivalent capabilities. It implies, so they're saying, I'm saying that it implies that economic and social participation requires identical rather than equivalent capabilities. I'm not saying they require equal. I'm not. Or because I'm saying that different traits can lead to equal value. Different traits can lead to different value and contribution through different paths. I think this point actually goes in my favor because I'm saying they're different, so they're not identical. It implies the economic. I don't think it does imply that because okay. So I'm responding to number 4 where they basically said I'm implying that these things, that different traits can't lead to equal value and contribution through different paths. They can't. A woman has to bear a child. Imagine telling her that she has to go and work away every day while the husband stays at home with the baby. Do you think the average woman wants to leave her child after she just gives birth, or does she want her husband to be able to go work or even get help from her? I'm not saying she doesn't need help. I'm saying, like, do you think she wants to be completely absent that process by having to work and be away all that time? I'm saying no. So we shouldn't look to have equal value. Equal value to me sounds like, oh, each parent gets time with the child. or no equal value may be that the child is looked after the same amount of time, depending no matter what parent looks after it. But that doesn't equate to like a human happiness. I think they're missing the human happiness angle on this Chat GPT. Okay, so let's see. Got one more, and then this might be I'm gonna try to speed through the next one. Most modern economic and social roles don't rely primarily on physical differences. They depend on intellectual, creative, and interpersonal work. What? Yeah, this is it. This thing is going hard. They going hard in the paint right now. They said, "Oh, you want to talk? Let's talk. Let's talk, Day Day." Oh my goodness. Let me address each point, nigga. Regarding efficiency and happiness, this assumes that biological predispositions necessarily lead to an optimal outcome. However, many societies
Let me address each point. Regarding efficiency and happiness, this assumes that biological predispositions necessarily lead to optimal outcomes. However, many societies that have increased women's participation have seen increases in GDP, innovation, and reported life satisfaction. If we restricted people based on group averages, we'd lose valuable contributors who deviate from these averages. On physical strength and child-rearing preferences, while average physical strength differences exist, modern technology and automation have largely eliminated the relevance of physical strength for most roles. As for child-rearing preferences, these vary significantly among individuals. Many women desire careers, many men desire primary caregiving roles, and many people want both. Biological capability for childbearing doesn't necessarily translate to exclusive desire for childrearing. Regarding biological determinism, while biology influences development, it's not deterministic. We see this in how women's roles have varied dramatically across cultures and time periods. Even with consistent biology, the same biological bodies have produced everything from warrior queens to cloistered housewives, suggesting biology enables rather than dictates. On differences, yes, men and women are different, but these differences don't logically necessitate unequal participation. Different attributes can contribute valuable perspectives and capabilities to both economic and social spheres. Regarding family, the nuclear family model isn't the only one that produces stable, loving families. Many cultures have successfully raised children with various family structures. Moreover, economic participation doesn't preclude family formation. Many societies have found ways to balance both, often leading to more resilient family units with diverse role models and resources. These patterns of biological differences exist on a spectrum rather than as absolutes, and societies that allow for individual variation within these patterns often show higher.
So we got here because it's about participating equally. And those are some strong arguments. So basically, the strong philosophical argument is saying that abortions keep women from participating in society the same way. Or no, being pregnant does. Being pregnant keeps women from participating in society the same way. But however, being pregnant keeps you from contributing to society the same way doesn't mean that the state doesn't have an interest in protecting that life. So therefore, it's balanced by saying that before the fetus is viable, we're going to allow you to abort it because you do have some agency over your life and what you want to happen. And the state and humanity does have an interest in deciding, like in needing human beings to be born. So we can't have a rule that say you can kill a child as long as 9 months. No one wants to see a child in the pregnancy get killed at 9 months. Or can you kill your child before they're 18? Like all of these kind of like, because when there's viability, what does viability mean? Like breathe oxygen, but it's not how. What if someone doesn't want to feed it? But I know what viability means, that like if can it be unhooked from the mother without dying immediately? I assume that's what they mean. And not me saying unhooked. You can tell I'm thinking about this in like a cold philosophical way. Unhook the baby. But that is a strong argument. That is a strong argument. I think the only thing that can kind of really also come at that is with the religious piece. Like religiously, you have to feel some kind of way about going inside your body and ending a life. But I think many religious women, I think all human beings believe in God, or not all human beings believe in God, but I think the overwhelming majority of human beings believe in God. So I say that to say that many women, of course, don't want to engage in something like that. But I think abortions happen more when women aren't married. I know some married women still get abortions. I don't know that. I would assume that, just given the sheer amount of people there are in the world, and the amount of situations and things that can happen. But I think unmarried couples and one-night stands are the result of much more abortions. So I think that if we know something is very negative and we can do some kind of preemptive measures as a society, as a people, as individuals, we should try to do that. And I feel like if the state maybe held a harder line against abortion, people would be more practical or more on top of their responsibilities as human beings to not have to need to do that, because law sometimes incentivizes and incentivizes behavior. But most 16, 18, 20 something year olds, I don't know, man. So, but I'm gonna ask, what is the Islamic summary of this issue? What is the Islamic summary of abortion? So before I hit enter, I think when it comes to Islam, I think abortions. I'll go from what I think I know most to what I think I know least. What I think I know most is that if it's early on, not if it's early on. I think if any time that the child needs to be aborted in order to save the mother's life, I think that's okay. I think that's okay. But there might be some kind of nuance if it's like down to like 8 months and you have to. I don't know, but I'm just trying to be as logically complete as I can, just because it's not the same as early on and late. But Islam normally puts a high price on life, and the mother's life does matter in pregnancy. So if the child is threatening the mother's life, then I think it can be aborted. Now, other than that, on cases of rape and incest, I think I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if it's not allowed, but I also wouldn't be surprised if it is allowed in those circumstances. I don't know, and it's probably case by case sometimes. And now, just when it comes to preferential abortions, I think Islam, there may be a minor argument for like an early like 1 month window or a little bit longer than that. I think there may be some evidence for that, but overall, I think preferential abortions are not allowed. Meaning, you get pregnant by someone you consensually had sex with, and your life is not threatened. Can you abort that child? So, and I would say Islam says no, you can't do that in those circumstances. But let's see. Not that Claude knows anything, but. All right. In Islamic law, the permissibility of abortion varies on several factors. There are different scholarly opinions here. A general overview. Most Islamic scholars agree that abortion is allowed if continuing the pregnancy poses a serious risk to the mother's life. Past that question. The more flexibility before ensoulment. So this is kind of what I was getting to, like the 1 month, which. Oh wow! So that's really it around. So ensoulment is basically when Muslims believe that the soul comes into the child's body. But here it says more flexibility because no one wants to say you can do an abortion in the first. Damn, I mean, how many months is that? 30, 60? That's 4 months. I never heard it was that long. I don't. Wow. So Hanafi is the longest one. It's 4 months. The father consent is generally required unless there are exceptional circumstances on whether rape or so varying opinions. That's what I kind of thought. Whether severe fetal abnormalities, the exact time and when abortion is. So Maliki is from the moment of conception, which I think that's the hard line position, and then this is the lenient position, and the other two schools take intermediate positions. Yeah, wow. So very interesting, and I think that's way before a fetus is viable. I don't think a fetus is viable at 4 months. So yeah. So Islam wins again. Islam has very educated. Let's see what it says about Christianity. The Judaism I gotta do Christian. Yo, this is about to be fun. Let's do Christianity first. But then should we do Judaism first? I'm about to be at my limit. I forgot it was 20 different kind of Christians. Let's see. Opposes all abortions in all circumstances. Considers it a grave. A Roman Catholic Church came in swinging, saying, But there's a chance that this is what the Maliki school says as well. It definitely says It says conception happens at birth, so that means. But I think the only Maliki may still allow you to do an abortion if it poses a risk to the life of the mother, because here, remember, we say that that rape and incest is still varies. It varies, so it can kind of go either way. But we didn't get Malachi specific. But Malachi is at the point of conception. So Malachi and the Roman Catholic Church both agree that life begins at conception and is sacred. But we don't know whether they agree on the rape and incest and life of the mother. So it may not agree in all cases. Eastern Orthodox generally opposes, may allow exception to his mother's life, views it as grave sin, but not unforgivable. Mainline Protestants, Episcopal, Lutheran, Methodist, often take more nuanced positions. Many support abortion rights with some restrictions. Generally believe the decision should be made by the woman with prayer and counsel. Very understanding, very Jesus-esque. Come get a forehead tap. All right, but so basically, do what you want. Yeah, evangelical church typically strongly oppose abortion, consider life at conception. Some allow rare exceptions for mother's life. Okay, now hey, let's go to the big bro. Let's go to big bro. How did I pose that our abortion is allowed in? Let's see. They're gonna listen. Reform Judaism, yes, they like to by the million. Let me see. While they're still living and called Palestinians. That's a horrible joke, but listen. Let's see what they say. In Judaism, the approach is generally more nuanced than absolute prohibition or permission. Here's how. Basic premise: a female is not considered a full person. Not a full person, okay? I would agree they're not a full person. The mother's life takes precedence over the potential life of the fetus. Islam agrees. Judaism prioritizes the preservation of existing life. Same thing you just said. All right. The different Jewish movements view abortion. For Orthodox, permits abortion when mother's life is at risk, may allow abortion for severe mental health issues, generally requires consultation with the rabbinic authority, more restrictive, but not absolutely prohibited. Allows abortion for physical and psychological health reasons, considers a broader range of justifications than Orthodox views women's well-being as primary. Well-being, not your life, your well-being. In Reform, most liberal positions supports full reproductive rights, considers a personal decision, emphasizes individual autonomy. So yeah, basically okay. I'm petty for this question, but I gotta ask it because I need to move on to the next thing. Let's see if it mentions the fact that Jews can charge interest to non-Jews. Prohibits charging interest to fellow Jews. I'm out of messages. I did my thing. I knew I had to get one more in. I was a good amount of. Strictly prohibits interest. Any loan that charges interest, any loan to any human being is forbidden. Wow, not just other Muslims. Interesting. Islamic banking uses alternative features like profit sharing arrangements, free-based services, lease-to-own agreements. Even small amount of interest are prohibited. This applies both giving and receiving. Judaism charging to fellow Jews is forbidden. Historically, allow charging interest to non-Jews. Developed Hertka Iska, a legal framework that restructures loans as business partnerships. Modern Jewish denominations vary in how strictly they interpret these rules. Many modern Jews participate in conventional banking, while some Orthodox Jews still use alternatives. Historically prohibited usury. Martin Luther and other reformers opposed charging interest. So Martin Luther, the Protestants wasn't supposed to be charging interest. Modern Christianity generally accepts reasonable interest. Some denominations still discourage or prohibit predatory lending. Focus has shifted from prohibiting all to prevent exploitation. All right, y'all, it's been real.